increasing foreign exchange inflows, crude oil prices remaining above the federal government's benchmark of $42.5 per barrel, positive impact of the war against corruption manifested in the ease of doing business improvement, and policies aimed at boosting economic productivity. And this was contained in a publication by the Nigerian Stock Exchange 2016 Market Recap and Outlook for 2017. It also states that the Nigerian capital market will have to do a better job at promoting its unique value proposition to both global and domestic investors. Monetary policy will continue to play a vital role in determining activity in the market, with forecasts for inflation expected to moderate due to the base effect. The exchange believes that all things equal, monetary authorities will have more flexibility with respect to interest rates and foreign exchange regime. Hence, good coordination between fiscal and monetary policy should result in resolution of aforementioned structural deficiencies and drive economic growth. Cognizant of the ever-evolving economic realities on ground, the NSC stated that it will take an adaptive approach to strategy execution in 2017. Global economic growth is projected to reach 3.4% in 2017 according to the IMF, while Goldman Sachs chief economist put these estimates at a range of 3% to 3.5%. Accordingly, all estimates suggest that there will be positive global growth in 2017. Now let's pause and take a look at latest figures from the Nigerian Stock Exchange. The International Monetary Fund (IMF) has released a new study looking at the significant challenges that low-income countries face and how they can develop policies aimed at stoking sustained and inclusive growth. The report, Roads to Stronger Growth in Low-Income Countries, authored by Tao Zhang and Vladimir Klov, found that while investment critical to this agenda has been rising in recent years among low-income countries, weak infrastructure is still hampering growth. Sean Nolan, IMF Deputy Director for Strategy, Policy and Review, outlined the challenges in a briefing in Washington. Governments need to make significant improvements to lay foundations for flourishing economies. Roads to connect people to markets, electricity to keep factories running, sanitation to stave off disease, and pipelines to deliver safe water. For that reason, upgrading and expanding transport, telecommunications, and utilities is a key pillar in many countries' national development strategies.
Among the key issues are providing bank supervisors with adequate powers and independence, independence from the political system, for example, building institutional capacity, inevitably, and straightening active enforcement, particularly with state banks.
Nolan told reporters that many low-income countries face constraints on their ability to finance big projects and find their banking systems under stress. With Business News, I'm Leah Cutting. Baba Tunde.
All right, thank you very much, dear Leah Katung Babatunde, for the business package on Good Morning Nigeria. And next for us now is a look at some of the headlines in some of the papers we have this morning.
And Bayo Atoyebe is right here with us. Bayo, it's good to see you again. Brand new day.
Yes, brand new week. Good morning, Claire. Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Bayo, we hope you had a nice weekend.
He sure did. It's all over your face.
Armed Forces remember these activities, paying respect to our fallen heroes.
That's right. Okay, now let's begin our review straight away by taking a look at the headlines on the front page of this day newspaper. Now, above the nameplate, we have the headline: Nigeria's forex earnings hit $24 billion in third quarter 2016. And next to that, just above the nameplate directly, is Kerry, that's the U.S. Secretary of State, lost 14-year-old Nigerian Zuriel Oduwole's global advocacy for girl education. Details of the story can be found inside. Now, also there on the front page, beside the front page photograph, you have it there. Federal government rejects BBOG's conditions for participating in Northeast Tour. BBOG stands for Bring Back Our Girls. That is in connection with the Chibok girls abducted in 2014. Lead story says, with a double-decker headline, "We have restored Nigeria's sanity and territorial integrity," says Buhari. And two riders to that commenced the military for what? I can't get that immediately now, but the next one, of course, has to do for conquering terrorism. And Khan praises federal government over fight against terror and corruption. Lastly, strip headline on the foot of the front page says, "The Gambia, use of force imminent as ECOWAS plans to oust Jammeh." Details of the story can be found inside.
All right, Kingsley, we'll take on the Daily Trust. And the Daily Trust has a bold caption on the front page, and it reads, "Federal government states to spend 1.8% of budgets on agriculture." And indeed, there is a very graphic, well-detailed analysis of the budget breakdown. If you take a look at it, you'll find there, of course, the total budget for 2017 in the agri sector, that's, of course, comprising the federal government, states, it's totaling 13.5 trillion. You can see there, arrowed there on the on the left-hand side, and then you find, of course, a breakdown between the north and south budgets, with, of course, the south having 3.8 trillion, while the north has a total of 2.4 trillion. But on the right-hand side, you find a further breakdown of states, of course, with their different agri budgets. Sokoto has 14.6, and Ogun has 11.6 billion. Those are two states with two-digit figure agri budget. The list, of course, is Enugu with 465 million naira budget, and it goes right down to Lagos State with 4.7 billion naira agri budget. It's very detailed graphic presentation there on the front page of Daily Trust. Other stories that are trending at the bottom, you have Gates, 7 others as wealthy as half of world's population, and this is coming from Oxfam. And then Dangote sets up truck assembly plant in Lagos. It's on page 13. Governors reluctant to sign death warrants. It's on page 10. And just to return just a little below the nameplate, you find Brussels return 107 AK-47, 267 Dane guns in Katsina. And Buhari in video call to troops in Sambisa and Liberia. And this details of the stories you can find on page 3. Bayo, which of those?
Yes, let's start with yesterday. That was Armed Forces Remembrance Day. President Muhammadu Buhari led the solemn wreath-laying ceremony at the National Arcade.
Yes, we have that picture. Yes. Sorry, I beg your pardon. On the front page of Daily Sun. Yes. Kinsley, do you have any bolder one?
No, yes. Well, let's see. You also have it on the front page
most
of Nigerian
papers have it,
and most papers have
most papers have
by
it.
the way, yes.
He actually admonished troops
on this day as well.
Addressed troops live via satellite, and he said, "You have made the country proud. The success you have recorded have been well received by Nigerians." He wished them success and maintaining the high standards and efficiency in their assignments. All leaders of the executive, the legislature, judiciary, armed forces, the police, and in fact representative of the wife of fallen heroes, a widow of the fallen heroes, joined the Nigerian Legion in laying wreath. May their sacrifice of yesterday for our today not be in vain. In Lagos, Governor Akinwumi Ambode's message may have been an echo of his compatriot governors around the nation. He said, "For every January 15, we come together to remember our past heroes." And the essence of this is being Nigeria, is for us to live as a united country. He added that as some people had laid their lives for us to be here today, we have to pay them their respect. He said, we should work also to ensure that the sacrifice of our heroes are not in vain. January 15, it may be recalled, was the end of the Nigerian Civil War that marked the no winner, no vanquished brotherly civil war. The other story,
before you leave
yes,
the armed forces, Bayo, there's a very interesting picture I just like to put on the screen there, and it's on, of course, on the inside page of Daily Trust. on page 6 exactly, and you find, of course, 2 children, very uniquely dressed in, of course, apparently the, father's, police uniform. And of course, it says children of Police Sergeant Gidedo during the 2017 Armed Forces Remembrance Day in Gombe. But it's coming up right now, and I just like for it to be put out there on the screen, just of course
to
in
see,
the mood.
the level of participation, the children too.
There they are, Bayo.
Yes. Now they're learning
To salute our heroes past.
Honestly.
Yeah, but I can see the younger kid to the right has a holster. Is that a live pistol or something?
It's likely to be a toy pistol. Talking about the story about Bring Back Our Girls, the federal government has rejected the Bring Back Our Girls condition that they want to be part of the mission, and therefore the mission should be pushed forward. Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, said we cannot push this forward because there's a need to proceed on Monday due to the narrow window that the weather provides. Secondly, satellite downlinks streaming have already been booked for Monday, and that has been secured. Other grounds for which they cannot postpone the trip is that other groups, including international journalists, have been invited and they are all ready. Preparations have also been made by the military to receive those who are visiting. It may be recalled that the Bring Back Our Girls group on January 14 wrote a letter signed by Obiageli Ezekwesili and had proposed that the pre-tour meeting be held before the tour will be carried out. She also demanded a retraction by the Chief of Army Staff, referring to some of the activities as social advocacy terrorism. For over 1,000 days, the group have championed the cause of Chibok girls. As altruistic as their value and cause may be, sometimes some of their pronouncements have put them in very bad light. Of recent, an official of the Bring Back Our Girls had publicly claimed that the question and the claim that Sambisa Forest has been liberated is not believable, and they don't believe it. This kind of pronouncement tend to undermine the credibility of the military, particularly when they don't have alternative credible information to relay what truly maintains in that place. It may be recalled that on April 14, 2014, Chibok girls were adopted from their secondary school, and reports coming there gives a matter of concern. Already in Borno State, there is a matter of concern. An interfaith group, Northern Interfaith and Religious Organization for Peace, has questioned the motive of Borno State government for about its arrested official. The chairman of Mafa local government, Shetima Lawan, was arrested and is being interrogated by the security agencies, allegedly for harboring insurgency figures. Bishop Musa Thompson addressed a press conference in Abuja and said that while soldiers are walking around up and trying to trap the escaping terrorists, politicians are covering up subverting militants. The account of some rescue Chibok girls revealed that after they were moved from Chibok, they were actually taken to Maiduguri, and they remained in Maiduguri for 2 months in the GRA in some police quarters. After that, they were relocated to Goza, where they stayed for 8 months. At that time, Boko Haram had declared Goza as a caliphate. It was when the Nigerian Air Force raided and the place was bombed that they eventually moved to Sambisa Forest. In whose property were they housed in Maiduguri and Goza, if that information is true? So those are the fallouts that is coming out from.
All right, let's just say, and whose property and then in whose custody were they at the material time? Well, you have all kinds of claims and counterclaims pertaining to the abduction of the Chibok girls, and of course, the Bring Back Our Girls, who have often camped out near at the Unity Square, Unity Fountain area in the central area of Abuja. Now that they are declining the offer of the federal government to visit Sambisa, perhaps we'll wait to see what the next steps would be. But we do hope that at some point there will be some convergence, in terms of getting to know the true state of things and then how to properly channel your advocacy.
The objectives are the same.
That's right.
To get the Chibok girls released.
Right,
The remaining Chibok girls released. Let's take the Nigerian pilot next as our paper. Nigerian pilot, below the name flag. No going back on February 1st for speed limiting device. That's according to the FRSC. Details of that on page 12. Barrow to remain in Mali until end of Jammeh's tenure. That's on page 5. Now, the lead story, of course, has to do with the Armed Forces Remembrance Day. So we just go down to the other headlines below the photograph. They said we already discussed the federal government and Chibok girls over the planned visit to Sambisa Forest. Inflation rate hits 18.55% in December. That's attributed to the National Bureau of Statistics. That's on page 32. Dealing in substandard products is like terrorism, and that's attributed to the DG of Standards Organization of Nigeria. On page 4, sacked Enugu ex-chief judge to forfeit 1.2 billion naira to federal government. And anti-insurgency war, Borno government undermining military efforts. That's according to a group. And on page 10, Bayelsa youths urged to shun militancy and key into rice farming.
All right, and lastly, Bayo, we really don't have much time. Just the side incident that happened, I think, over the weekend, the Turkish school attack is the lead story on the front page of the Daily Sun, and we understand that the students' kidnappers are demanding 1.2 billion naira, 100 million ransom on each schoolgirl, Nigerian officials, and then 300 million naira on each Turkish official. Now, that's quite sad. All the other stories we've taken, except, of course, one of those trending at the bottom, which says 10 killed as gunmen attack Benue village. We've, of course, read the story on the armed forces and other stories trending. That's just it, Bayo.
Yes, talking about the Turkish kidnap, the Ogun State Police Command has already reacted. They say that their mandate is to get victims released unhurt and to get the hoodlums arrested. Actually, they used the phone of one of the kidnappers to call the family and made that ransom demand of 1.2 million. Meanwhile, the school has been closed and to allow detention lists and also to allow security persons to work. Meanwhile, another kidnap attempt in Ondo had been foiled. An Olori, wife of a traditional ruler of Ikoya, was abducted, and policemen and hunters mobilized and followed them. Immediately they released the Olori and they follow up, and one of the kidnappers was also shot at.
All right, Bayo, that's about it for today on Newspaper Review. Of course, we look forward to having you tomorrow.
Tomorrow will be another day. Thank you for having me.
All right. This is Good Morning Nigeria, happening live on NTA, and it's time for us now to take a short break. When we come back, we'll launch our conversation.
Hear the call of change, stand up, Nigeria. Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. Go to so let the change begin from within. Look at you, Ogerola. Change begins with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me.
So what's up, sweetheart? You really look like you're up to something.
I have a secret.
Okay?
I'll be going to Europe next week.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Like you have your visa, your passport, your plane ticket?
No, not that way. Some men are helping us. We pay them, they take us through the desert, and then we cross the sea into Europe.
The desert, the sea. Isn't that the route where many have died?
Yes, it is indeed a very dangerous journey. In 2016 alone, 4,900 people died while crossing the Mediterranean Sea to enter Europe. Many were Nigerians. For the very few who survived the journey, they are forced into prostitution or other crimes just to survive. Eventually, they will be arrested and deported to Nigeria. Don't be a victim. Don't go this way.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Certainly, Ajunwa is the Olympic champion. We did it before and we can do it again with the new strategy through the first National Grassroots Sports Festival scheduled for Abuja, Nigeria from 22nd to 29th April 2017 to prepare Nigeria to win medals in international sporting events. NTA, the largest television network in Africa, is the broadcast partner. For sponsorship, contact the Chairman Chief Coordinator on 0809 647 0111 or Mukta on 080-330-20855. Email info@grassrootssportsfestival.com. The Grassroots Sports Festival is endorsed and in partnership with the Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports Development. Join us.
Right now, the transport sector is said to have the potentials to contribute more than 4%. It presently contributes to the nation's gross domestic product GDP, that's if properly handled. To kickstart our conversation, Timothy Yusuf tells us more in this report.
The transport sector has over the years been bedeviled by the challenges of bad roads, inadequate fleet of buses and trucks, irregular and inadequate trains and airplane services, as well as congested ports. Others are the deficiency of trained transport managers and planners, capital restructuring bottlenecks, institutional reforms and ineffective traffic regulations. It is to address all this that the Buhari administration is pursuing reforms that will make the sector viable by enactment of laws to open up the sector to new investors. To this end, the federal government is developing a national transportation master plan aimed at diversifying the economy and improving non-oil sector revenue. Experts believe that the industry was left for so long without a new master plan, hence its dismal performance and near collapse. They, however, record efforts of successive administrations to revive the sector, and notably is the revitalization of rail transportation by the immediate past administration, which the present is consolidating on. The talk about developing a transportation master plan has been on since 1974, but 42 years down the line, the country has not made headway. This, experts say, has not helped grow the sector to achieve the huge potentials, arguing that even smaller countries have gone ahead to copy Nigeria's blueprint and implemented, leaving the country procrastinating. Those who know say, in addition to the new template developed, government should also dust previous policy documents, update them to be in tune with global transportation realities, and commence implementation. It is also the opinion of many that the involvement of the 36 states and the FCT is imperative, as the federating units also have a role to play, since transportation sector is on the concurrent list. What is the state of the transportation sector now? What are its potentials? How can it assist in the diversification agenda? And how can it do much more than the present 4% it contributes to the GDP? These are some of the questions guests on NTA Good Morning Nigeria will be providing an insight into.
All right, Timothy Yusuf, our correspondent, thank you very much there for that background report. And we have joining us in the Abuja studios at this time, the Minister of Transport, is Right Honorable Rotimi Amechi. Honorable Minister, a pleasure to have you join us on the program today.
Thank you very much and good morning.
All right, now straight away, the key point in the background report indicates how it's necessary for the country to ramp up the contribution of the transport sector to the country's GDP. And we have seen a lot of actions and movements in recent times with regard to what is happening in rail and maritime sectors. Exactly what is driving and guiding these movements in rail and maritime transportation sectors?
This is the directive of the president. The president, as soon as we were sworn in, did tell me that his focus is on railways. He believes and knows that the economic growth in Nigeria will greatly be predicated on the ability of the government to construct as many railway lines as possible. Yes, we did inherit an attempt by the last government to revive the 3,505 kilometers of railways, which the colonial government left behind. That is a subject of negotiation that's ongoing between us and GE, which, if successful, would completely rehabilitate the entire railway infrastructure in Nigeria, but though narrow gauge. The basic difference between the narrow gauge and the standard gauge is the speed element. And like you're aware, we're about the third country in Africa with a standard gauge, which is about 186 kilometers to Kaduna. The second standard gauge will start before the end of February or first week in March, which will be the Lagos-Ibadan. It will start from the Apapa Seaport to Ibadan. On the pipeline, let me borrow the Nigerian language, will be the Calabar-Port Harcourt segment of the Coastal Railway, and then at the same time, the Kano-Kaduna. So this year, you will see the Kano-Kaduna, which is about 150 or 180 kilometers, and the Calabar-Port Harcourt. And then, like I said, before the end of February to early March, we should start the construction of the Lagos-Ibadan. So the president has clearly identified his focus, which is railway. At the same time, he believes that we should ensure that the current congestion at the seaport and the attempt by both importers and non-importers to go into the seaport and make it difficult for those who do business in the seaport should be addressed. And like you know, the Nigerian Ports Authority is doing that. And there's huge improvement. You may say that importation or maritime activities appear to have reduced, but that the congestion is no longer as bad as it used to be. And a lot of activities are going on to ensure that by 2019, we should have seamless activities in the seaport.
And everyone, so you've just talked about what is driving the development in the transport sector. You just said that it's the presidential directive. Does it mean that we do not have a transportation, policy?
That can be possible. I listened to your reporter. It is not possible that we don't have a transportation policy. It's implementation that's the issue. It's been there since Ojomadekwe. We want to review it because it certainly can't remain like that forever. We want to review it and update it, but the transportation policy has always been in place. Now, what happens is each government picks up what it wants to implement. Sometimes I want to assume that some ministers don't even bother reading or looking at it, which becomes a problem. It is critical that all ministers, it is critical that all permanent secretaries and officials of the ministry bring it forward to the minister to call his attention to that. So it doesn't just start grappling with problems he doesn't know about. But whether there's a transport policy, of course there is. If by February I should be in Morocco to discuss African transportation policy, I'll be going basically with our transportation policy, and a review of it will be necessary after that meeting.
Well, in addition to what you just said, let's back up a bit. You indicated earlier the ongoing negotiations with GE as well as the various rail corridors where we should expect development: Kano, Kaduna, Calabar, Port Harcourt, Lagos, Ibadan. What is your response to some commentators who have expressed concern as to the underlying principle driving all of this? Is it concessioning? And if it is concessioning, was it open to all potential bidders? I think that's important for us to clarify, and then we move on.
As part of the federal government procurement policy, you have what they call unsolicited proposal. You can walk up to the Minister of Transport and say, I want to do, and that's one reason I forgot to mention here, I want to do the Central Rail Line. That's unsolicited. Now, you will be taken through the processes. Now, that may not include advertisement. But even at that, as I come to those who criticize us, we have already advertised that should expire in the next 2 weeks or 1 week, I don't know now. Now, but if you come with unsolicited proposal, we deal with you accordingly. But the question to ask those critics, this 3,505 kilometers of railway has been there for ages. Why haven't they come forward? Now that somebody comes forward and says, listen, I want to rehabilitate the entire network and manage it and recoup the expenses I put, what government should do and Nigerian citizens should do is to encourage them to do that. And imagine goods moving from Aba to Maiduguri, or Port Harcourt to Maiduguri, or food items moving from Maiduguri to Port Harcourt, or those who want to export. The other day I went to inspect the inland dry port in Jos. The inland dry port in Jos may not survive if the Port Harcourt seaport is not rehabilitated. Because at the end of the day, his goods will come in from the Port Harcourt seaport and be transported through the railways. So even when he rehabilitate the Port Harcourt seaport, he must also rehabilitate the railways so that he'll be able to transport his freight or cargo from Port Harcourt to Jos. So the economic activities, it will generate economic activities. It will even help in industrialization.
So the level of participation of the current investors or proponents of engagement with the rail system relates essentially to the standard gauge rail line or to the upgrade of the narrow gauge line?
Government is currently constructing the standard gauge. You know that construction of the standard gauge is expensive. Okay. The Lagos to Ibadan is about 1.5 billion. I think Kano to Kaduna is about between 1.3 and 1.4 or something like that. And then Calabar Port Harcourt is about 3.4. The kilometers will determine how much it is. But if you put all of them together, they all will. If you do Lagos to Kano, it's about 8.7. Port Harcourt is about 11 points. So you put them together, it's about $20 billion. And the federal government is relying on the loan facilities we intend to take from the Chinese Exim Bank. Now, the other part is one we are concessioning, which we are in conversation with GE. And I think it is to get the private sector involved in the public sector and to hand over the management of that investment.
Okay, now the eastern flank of the rail line that's been under rehabilitation, you just mentioned the Jos dry ports. The eastern flank is supposed to run from Port Harcourt and ultimately terminate somewhere in Maiduguri or Unguru. What is the status of the rehab of the narrow gauge?
I'm not aware that there's a rehabilitation going on. I'm aware that there was a rehabilitation up to Aba. That's what I'm aware of. So if we are successful in our conversation with GE, if we are successful, then they will commence again from Port Harcourt up to Maiduguri. That affords those in the northeast the ability to, when they go back into agri, to be able to export or send their goods down to the south. But I want to also say that there is huge activity going on in the southeast. That also affords the southeast opportunity to have access to water in Port Harcourt because of the seaports in Port Harcourt. So you have the Port Harcourt, Aba, Umuahia, Enugu, then to Makurdi, to Jos, to Bauchi and Gombe, and then Borno, all of them covered. So you literally have revived the old. I don't know how many of you remember that some of us had to travel by rail to secondary schools and all that. And I had a secondary school I attended in Eche. We have to go through Aba. We arrive in a place called Ngwayeke. We come down there and take transport to Iberoma, where I did my early secondary school days. All that will be revived. And imagine the economic activities that would be generated from those things. And we believe that will be done before 2018 if our negotiation with GE is successful.
Are there likely obstacles to the negotiations? I mean, you keep saying if.
I was going to ask, so when you talk about concessioning, every Nigerian is like, it's frightened. What are the obligations?
What's frightening about concessioning? I don't think first, the National Assembly is there. They had invited us to come to brief them. So you have to deal with the National Assembly. There are procurement processes you have to deal with. Then you have to also deal with the fact that GE could say, I don't want to continue. You can never tell. Until you sign a document saying, these are the terms of engagement, and these are this by which you can do the concessioning, then you cannot be sure until that is finalized. That's what I mean by
the conditional if. Well, let's back up a bit again and then still take a look at rail transportation. There were concerns expressed by some persons last year, 2016, over the coastal rail line that we just mentioned, Calabar to Port Harcourt, as it was included in the 2016 appropriation bill. What again is the status of that?
Well, Yes, it's in the budget, but that's just the counterpart funding. If we don't get the loan from the Chinese Exim Bank, rather, we will not be able to do anything. So again, that has to also pass through the National Assembly. You know, when the National Assembly turned down the 30 billion request made by the federal government, I was a bit worried. Because if you want to come out of repression, you want to kickstart the economy again to growth, then you must do infrastructure development. That's what creates jobs. That's what puts money in the pockets of Nigerians. Nigerians cannot be hungry, and then we say we can't do those things. So when government said we are looking for 30 billion, what government was looking for 30 billion is direct loans to the investment. It's not to government pocket. It's not for the current expenditure. It's basically for infrastructure development. And I thought the National Assembly should be able to support such infrastructure development. Imagine the construction of railway from Lagos to Ibadan. Just imagine that. Imagine how many persons will be employed. We are first going to engage surveyors. The surveyors will not go there by themselves to just do the survey. They will employ other surveyors that will help them in the surveying. There will be people to clear the bush. Don't forget. And then they will engage workers. They will have to either import or buy ballast. Those who are involved in metal or iron ore business will be involved. A lot of things will be involved, to the point where if you even, let's say, caterers, people who cook for people as they pass from one village to the other, and let's use the caterers as an example. So even if you're not a trained caterer and you just go there and start cooking food for the workers, you will get money from the workers because the workers will pay salaries. The money you will get, you can use to pay school fees. So that's how the economy grows. It's not.
Unfortunately, these are mostly undocumented economic actors. So we're unable, therefore, to get their contribution into the national economic matrix. Some of them.
Well, but Honourable Minister, we will have to bring in, of course, our other guests into this conversation. But just before we do that, you have not mentioned anything about the aviation sector. Is that deliberate?
That's a good question. You've not asked anything about the aviation sector.
Well, when we're talking about transportation and...
you asked what is the focus, and I said the focus for us is basically to restore the growth of or development of the railway sector, of the transportation sector. And then I defined what it is like in the railway. Before then I addressed part of the maritime, so it wasn't deliberate.
Right now, what are we going to see? What is happening in the aviation sector? Because that's an area that has given a lot of people, a lot of concern.
Usually, I refer people back to the Minister of State for Aviation. But let's take the most topical issue now is Abuja airport and its closure. I was just having a conversation with my friend who is in the National Assembly, and I said to her that I don't know if we have a choice, and we're waiting for those who have alternative ideas. That basically the reason for which the Abuja airport is to be closed is for safety. If the airport was built to last for 20 years and it has lasted for 34 years, it means that you have compromised the foundation. And if the foundation has been compromised, the chances are that you can have incidents that you will not be able to account for. And it's important that the whole country realizes that the Ministry of Transportation is making all efforts to ensure that we're mindful of people's lives. We're mindful of the fact that it is inconveniencing for Nigerians to travel to Abuja, Kaduna to board a plane. We understand the challenges that airlines will face when they have to fly from Kaduna. We also want Nigerians to realize that we're also human beings and that we also fly. And I would not like to fly from Kaduna because we live in Abuja. But that inconvenience is to save lives. And what efforts have we put in place? The trains will run, and they may run for free of charge. We are fixing the Kaduna-Abuja road, and then the road will be policed, just like the rail lines will be policed. All activities that used to happen at the Abuja airport would then happen in Kaduna, including to process passengers who are traveling out of the country.
But those experts you talked about have already made their contribution. They've said, look, this can also be done simultaneously. You shut down some parts. You work within certain hours.
Don't forget again that in that 6 weeks, we're not constructing the entire airport. We would have done 1.6 kilometers this way and 1.6 kilometers this way. The only time we're shutting down the airport is when you get to the middle. That's why we say 6 weeks. And we're going to work like if there was no night. So don't tell me work at night. Work both at night and in the daytime. It's a 24-hour assignment. And we have said it will not exceed 6 weeks. The challenges are enormous, but we believe that Nigerians should trust the government.
All right, Honourable Minister, thank you for your response. Time now for us to, of course, introduce our guest in Lagos, Lagos Network Center. Of course, we have the National President of Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport Nigeria. It's Mr. Jibril Ibrahim. Mr. Ibrahim, we'd like to thank you for joining us in the conversation.
Very much. Good morning, Nigeria.
Morning. And also right there with him, we have an expert on maritime, and it's Otumba Kunle Folarin. He's Chairman, Nigeria Ports Consultative Council. Otumba Folarin, would like to appreciate your presence.
Good morning, Nigeria. I'm very pleased to be here today.
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, we hope that you've had the benefit of listening to the Honorable Minister who's here with us in the Abuja studios. He's given a broad outline of what his ministry is doing with regard to, just lately now, aviation. He's also talked about rail, but less about maritime. But we'll come into details of all of that. But in terms of logistics, beginning with Jibril Ibrahim, what is your impression of how the administration is proceeding with the upgrade of infrastructure in this regard with the potential to contribute to the GDP?
Seeing what has been happening, the Ministry of Transport has been making very giant strides in addressing some of this infrastructural decay that we have witnessed in the country. However, the topic for today is supposed to be transportation policy, national transportation policy. And I'm pleased to hear from the Honorable Minister that we have an approved national transportation policy in place. However, I think the government needs to do more on this. I remember very well my institute participated extensively in the development of the transport, the policy, the national transport policy. Unfortunately, not many people in the logistics and transport industry are very much aware of the present status of that policy. And I'm saying this because probably we have had in recent past the National Council on Transport being very active. But in the last 2-3 years, it has been virtually non-existent. The meetings never held. And it's a forum where most transport concerns are represented, including state governments, because transportation is on the concurrent list, and the responsibility for urban transportation and rural accessibility is in the hands of the state and local governments. I think the government needs to do more in publicizing the national transport policy. There is the need also to review it, because since the last time we were aware of its being put in place, there are so many changes. There is the need, even though we have seen the Federal Ministry of Transport being proactive with regards to the implementation of that policy. It is supposed to provide transport systems that are adequate for the nation, transport systems that are environmentally friendly, transport systems that are affordable to the citizenry, and transport systems that are efficient. Unfortunately, we don't have in the public domain that policy in order for it to serve as a barometer for us to measure what government is doing, and not only the government but the private sector. I'm happy to see some of the goals and objectives of the policy being implemented by government today. For example, opening the space for private sector participation, particularly in the rail mode. That has been a very good development, and it is going to ensure that there is, like the minister said, employment, economic development, social development, and of course, it will generate employment at the end of the day. That is for what the ministry is doing. We would encourage them from the angle of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport to do more by publicity. Let the people know, let everybody involved, because the private sector needs to come on board in this issue and contribute meaningfully to what is happening with regards to the implementation of the transport policy in Nigeria.
All right, Mr. Jibril Ibrahim, thank you. Let's also have your response, Otumba Folarin, on, of course, the effectiveness or efficiency of the transport policy. Now, a proper one, we understand, should of course have better coordination, model transportation coordination. It should be able to, of course, link the ports to the airports, to the roads, and so on and so forth. So, do you think that the transport policy we have now is sufficient? Is it, suitable for our purpose?
Let's start from basics. Transportation is a strategic instrument for development, for social development, for economic development. Transportation integrates economies. For example, continents are integrated by transportation, countries are integrated by transportation, states are integrated by transportation, towns are integrated by transportation, all leading to social and economic interaction and development. When you have a transport policy which is strategic to the development of the nation, it must outline very specific strategic planning and integrate by way of strategic alliances between all the modes of transportation. For example, when you have an efficient railway system, it will integrate with the seaports. If you have an efficient seaport system, it will integrate with the land system. There is strong correlation between service delivery and the opportunities that are abound. It's very important, therefore, to say, if you want to have the gains of the infrastructure, the investment in transportation, we must have a policy that directs the delivery to the people, the delivery to industry. Because at the end of the day, one of the key gains of transportation is employment, is empowerment and wealth creation. When you achieve all this, then you are having a policy that will not only drive the economy, but showcase the potential of the nation. Don't forget, as you said earlier, the GDP of the transportation contribution is 4%, which is very low. We must aim at a higher level of involvement of transportation system in the economy. Therefore, we need to focus very strongly in the implementation, particularly in the infrastructure provisions, because this is where the comments are coming from. There have been one decay in infrastructure in the system. There have been little or no attention to integrating the modes so that the benefit come up in the fore. No matter the investment you have in one single mode, if there are no strategic alliances with the other modes, then the benefit will not be felt. I believe very strongly, and it is clear, the transportation sector is the key. In fact, is in the commanding heights of the national economy, and it must be seen as such and addressed accordingly.
All right, many thanks to you, Otumba Fulani, for your opening remarks. Of course, we'll get back to Abuja. We have just joined us here, an expert on railway transportation, and he is Mr. Roland Taguba. Mr. Taguba, it's a pleasure to have you join us.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Taguba, of course, again, you've had the benefit of listening to the other guests, including the Honorable Minister who is here with us. Now, just moving away from looking theoretically at the transportation policy and saying to its implementation in terms of some of the items already indicated by the Honorable Minister, what's your take on what's going on in the rail sector, and what would you like to see done more urgently?
Well, thank you for the question. In terms of the national transport policy, I'm quite interested to hear that there is a national transport policy being implemented. In the NESG, it is an item that we have been talking about for so many years. As far as we're concerned, we are aware of a draft national transport policy, but I'm not aware that there is a white paper, and unless there is a white paper, it means that the Federal Executive Council has not approved a policy. And so we have a very serious concern that there is an understanding of what, among stakeholders, of what the national transport policy should be. And it is that that has led to this draft policy. But it hasn't gone through the formal processes. And so, to all intents and purposes, I'm interested to know if indeed there is transport policy.
Just sorry, very quickly, Honourable Minister, we'll respond to that.
No, I'm sure you're aware. Under Ujumadekwe, it was approved. It was approved. In fact, I made the copies. I ran into the copies in the ministry. Like I said, I doubt if these people are actually using the transport policy documents, because I had to ask for that document after I met the former Minister of Aviation, Chidoka, who then was an SA to Ujumadekwe, who called my attention to that document. And like I said, to everybody who is in the transportation sector, it is not about the policy alone, it's about its implementation, which is key. Because I can go back now, review it, update it, pass it through the cabinet and put it there and ignore it. It's about its implementation. And I've said that the focus this time is key to the success of the Nigerian economy is the railway transportation. It took us 2 weeks to convey each coach from Lagos to Abuja. Imagine that the railway was efficient. It would take you a day to bring any of those coaches. And you could take just the 3 coaches straight from Lagos to Abuja. Imagine the man hour you waste. Imagine the fact of the energy that goes into transporting from Lagos to Kano or from Kano to Lagos. In the study that was done, it was revealed that you have about nearly 30 million tons of freight between Kano and Lagos. Imagine how many tons we move in a year through the rail lines. Just 200 tons. Just 200 tons. So when I say the president's focus is on railway, it is because you will literally offload that pain that happens on the road network to railway, and which will make it faster and easier for those who want to transport their distance.
As part of the fundamental framework for the operation of the rail sector, there was an attempt under the previous administration to, as it were, remove or excise railways from the exclusive list as it is currently, at present, on the 1999 Constitution as amended, to say, okay, take it off there so that it's no longer the business of the federal government. States and other stakeholders can now participate. Is that being pursued by the current administration?
Well, we have not done that. What we've rather done is any of the state governors applies for franchise or anything to construct railways, they are given. It's not a thing for debate. We know that it should be on the concurrent list, because actually the construction of railways should be. What about internal? If you say between interstate, the federal government should be able to do it. Interstate should be the responsibility of the state governor. And basically what we do in the means of transportation sector is intermodal means of transportation. You know, I just told you here that the rail line from Lagos, we have to extend it. We want to extend it to Apapa. In the coastal rail, we extend it to Warri, to Port Harcourt, to Onne Seaport, and to Calabar Seaport. So.
All right, Mr. Ataguba, you've listened to the Honourable Minister. Emphasis right now is on railway rehabilitation, but of course, like we said, railway rehabilitation mainly for the movement of people. It has to be linked, to ports and other, aspects of infrastructure. So, what can be done right now to rev up, the contributions of the transport sector, in the GDP?
Thank you.
With regards to railway rehabilitation.
Thank you. There are 2 major developments that are taking place in the polity, in the railway sector right now that are very fundamental and will drive the future development. One is the attempt to concession the existing narrow gauge lines. It is something that has been in the offing for too long. In fact, I think the first attempt was made in 2001. So 15 years on, we're only trying to get to where we were 15 years ago. But it's a very, very positive thing. There's a need for the private sector to operate the railways. It's the only way we can sustain the railways. That's number one. Number two is taking place in the legislature with a lot of cooperation from the executive. This is the passage of the railway bill and a number of other transport sector reform legislation. These are very, very significant developments and therefore one for which the government on both sides, on the executive side and in the legislature, should be commended. We've been asking for these things for too long, and it's about time that we, got to grips with what needs doing.
All right, Mr. Roland Atagoba, thank you very much. Just to return to our Lagos Network Center, where we still have Otumba Kunle Folarin as well as Jibril Ibrahim. Let's again talk about the blue economy, which relates to water transportation. There are concerns about the level of indigenous participation, for instance, in maritime operations. But the first aspect I would like you to deal with is why there appears to be poor utilization of other ports elsewhere in the country other than Apapa and Tinkan. And you find the level of congestion that you see in the Lagos area from time to time. What, in your opinion, is responsible for this? And how can the government and other stakeholders respond to the need to upgrade facilities and utilization of other port facilities elsewhere? Otumba Folarin.
Let me address the issue of patronage first. When you patronize a port, it starts from the importer or exporter who determines which ports is preferred destination. Of course, government can, by providing the necessary infrastructure and also the superstructure in those ports, attract importers and exporters to prefer those ports as destination ports. But having said that, there are all the constraints you have to look at. Why is there no patronage of these ports? The infrastructure is key. If you take one of the ports, for example, they are about 57 kilometers from the Fairway Buoy, from the Atlantic. And that's an extra journey. Secondly, the issue of the depth of the channel that leads to these ports, that we attract a bigger ship to patronize the ports. And by economy of scale, the bigger the ship, the lower the freight rate, because the cost of going to those ports will be lower. But what is important for us to address today is that over time, there have been kind of lower patronage of these ports and lower development of the infrastructure at these ports. Therefore, continue to be a distraction to those importers that may like to use those ports. What we like to see is a diversion of cargo to those various destinations that are available. If you are, for example, a business person in the eastern part of Nigeria, there's no question that you should prefer to use Port Harcourt instead of coming to Lagos and adding road transportation to your cost. If you are within the central part of Nigeria, which leads to a lot of places in northern Nigeria, you can use the Warri Port as access to your destination. In order to achieve all this, we must do three things, very fundamental. One, the infrastructure must be addressed. Two, the channels leading to the ports must be improved so as to attract bigger ships to patronize this port. And thirdly, incentives. Incentives in terms of ships dues, port dues, terminal operations dues, so that those who have cargo that are destined for those regions, those states, will be attracted to use them. If your costs vary very little, in a very little way, or none at all, from using Lagos or using Port Harcourt, then of course you continue to use Lagos, which is due to a disadvantage and lack of optimal utilization of those ports. What we would like to see is that these ports are gateways to the northern part of Nigeria, to central Nigeria. So there's no need to use Lagos ports alone for accessing the inland destination of Nigeria. We know that you have the ICD, Inland Container Depots, planned as inland destinations. But what is attractive enough is for incentive to be established either by the Port Authority or the terminal operators or a combination of people who deliver services within these ports so that it becomes attractive. And of course, at the end of the day, if you create employment for people living around the region of those ports, it will empower those who are entrepreneurs there, and it will create wealth because you find a lot of people building warehouses and doing a lot of things that will enhance the economy of that state. And of course, all the issues that we are combating today, like youth unemployment, etc., will be addressed. What is important for us to understand is that no port develops for itself until all those issues that makes it attractive are addressed. That is key to allow the ports to grow, to allow the region to grow. And I think we should by now be looking at those issues and addressing them.
All right, Otumba Falarin, thank you very much. Let's get the views of Jibril Ibrahim on this as well. What needs to be done to encourage the use of other ports in the country other than those on the western flank?
Yeah, thank you very much. It appears Otumba has said most of the issues that should have been raised, but key to it, I will emphasize, is infrastructural development. There's going to be like making not much progress if we have all these rail projects going to some of these ports in the eastern part of the country, and we cannot evacuate efficiently the cargo that comes in through those ports. And even if you are able to move people to the eastern part of the country, you will need to move goods. Now that Nigeria is opening up in the area of agriculture, we need to have these goods, agricultural produce, being moved easily and efficiently to the coastal areas. And that, of course, must be on the basis that our ports are being used, our ports infrastructure must be developed, and it must be made efficient in such a way that it will attract vessels.
Thanks to you. Of course, we'll be back here in Abuja. Honourable Minister, you were in Jos over the weekend to inspect one of the inland container depots. How are we maximizing the potentials in that area?
There are two key issues that are involved in that inland container depot. First, we had to, government, even though I told the concessionaire that he has to partner with us, government must provide the siding for him, for his goods to be taken into the inland depot. The next thing government must also provide is that the rail system must function. If the rail system does not function, he is in trouble, because it means that he has to either import from Lagos and come by road or by air, in which case we also need to fix the Jos airport. I was at the Jos airport, and it requires attention. I quickly called the permanent secretary for the ministry and said they should include Jos in the 2017 budget so that we can fix the Jos airport. These are two essential elements that you need to fix for the ICD to work. The same with the Kano one, the same with the one at Ibadan, and the one in Funtua. Government would not just abandon them. You have to take the system to Funtua to enable it function. And luckily for us, in our conversation with GE, we included all this infrastructure development for them to review and revive if we eventually agree on that. Key, there's a point nobody has discussed here, even when you talk about transport policy. One of the greatest challenges that GE will face is the human element. The railway has lasted for too long a time that the human beings that are supposed to run those railways are no longer there. That's why as soon as I started our conversation with GE, the first thing I told them is, listen, we need a transportation university because we need to train manpower. We lack manpower for real development. So we need to look at that and focus on it and ensure it happens. Nobody would deny the fact that the current government has greatly focused on transportation, realizing that what is transportation? It's logistics. You can't walk from here. Well, I hear people walk from Kano to Abuja after one election, whatever it was.
It was from Lagos.
Whatever
it was from Lagos. Yes.
Whichever one. But you see, not too many people can do that. How many people can carry goods on their heads from Lagos to Kano? So you need to ensure that there's an efficient transportation system. The jet was him or the gentleman or Jubin who talked about the National Transportation Council that has not happened in the past 3 years. Yeah, but they must also realize that the talking will not solve the problem. What solves the problem for us now, for the government now, is infrastructural development. That's why, if you look at our budget, we moved from 6% to about 20% of the budget being capital. We have. And we believe that if government continues the way it is going, we may go to a point where you have 40% of the budget.
What's your response to the points articulated by the two guests at the Lagos Network Center with regard to how to incentivize port users for elsewhere other than Lagos? You know, cocoa is there, you know, Warri is there. You talked about Port Harcourt earlier. Calabar is supposed to be dredged. And, you know, Edo State has been canvassing the construction of the Gele port, which was used by the Portuguese in the 15th century.
But I've advised the state governor in Edo State that he can do it himself. Government will just give him the support we can give him. We can't be building ports everywhere we go to. It's not possible. There's the Onisha River Port. That's right. There's the Lukaja River Port that's not yet completed. There's the Baro River Port that's right. Near completion. That's what we're trying to focus. The Baro River Port will be connected to the narrow gauge rail line, and along that side, well, there's a rail line nobody's talking about. I can say it. The central rail line, which is referred to as Itabe, to Warri, is been abandoned for 32 years. We are reviving it. We are determined to complete it early next year. Workers, the contractors have gone back to site. Nobody's making noise about that. We have gotten the contractors back to site. We've gotten ZTE, what they call them, ZTE, back to site. And we're trying to wrap up everything to ensure that by next year we'll complete it. And we want to make sure that by next year, the budget is about 80 billion naira, that we're able to provide budget for this year and next year to complete it. So there are too many seaports or river ports everywhere. We need to streamline them and ensure that those ones that are necessary to be utilized are the ones we utilize. Now, it is not completely correct that if you put all these infrastructures in place, then the Port Harcourt seaport will work. People don't know that in terms of volume, I suspect that occasionally the Onel seaport has more volume than the Apapa seaport. I have reports to that effect. And it has to do with the fact that not just infrastructure, the efficient management of the seaport is also key.
So, no, but just a minute before we take reactions from our viewers, Warri Port is there, cocoa is there. Are you abandoning these ports? Are you leaving them to private developers? Are you
when I told you here that the Warri is nearing completion and will be completed soon, latest early next year or middle next year, it will come with the seaport development. You cannot abandon the Warri seaport, because if you do that, then the solid minerals will be difficult to export. The reason for which you are doing the central line is to be able to evacuate our solid mineral, and they have to be evacuated through the Warri seaport. So there's a conversation that we're having with a Chinese company. If that negotiation happens, then we may likely build a new seaport in Warri.
All right, Honourable Minister, we've received quite a number of tweets, and of course, our Twitter handle is right out there. It's at NTA German. You can also continue to send in your comments and suggestions. Kinsley would like to start off?
That's right. This is Hamza Dande. Hamza tweets, I'm advocating multimodal transport system upon which rail complements road and air. We need hubs in each of the geopolitical zones.
Okay, and that's from a regular, of course, viewer, Sani Michael Omakuji, and he tweets, Honourable Minister, we've had fantastic policies in the past, but failed at the implementations, of course, stage, which you have alluded to. What are you doing, going to do differently? That's his question.
And then Festus Akimboyewa tweets, government at all levels must invest massively in our transport infrastructure in order to develop our economy, provide jobs, and reduce inflation. All right, and Mike Anyako tweets, the federal government should fast-track the transportation policy in the country. Many Nigerians that traveled during the last festivities saw wahala. And Adamu Alta has this tweet, concessioning of the railways is a welcome idea, but what happens to the existing workers? And Ibrahim Tudu, Honorable Minister, what is the prospects of a public mass transportation program in the road sector? FGO should consider this, please. And change to progress. I hope the federal government will be able to start these railway projects as promised. Now they will help to stimulate economic activities along these routes. Those are some of the tweets that we have in the meantime. Let's bring in Roland Atagoba back again into this conversation dealing with the rail sector. From what the Honorable Minister has indicated and from what we also see unfolding before our eyes, are we on the right path from your perspective? Are we likely to have, as it were, a groundswell, of rail development projects all around the country conducing to the kind of things that we would like to see in terms of its contribution to economic activities?
That's what we would like to see. What the Minister is doing and what he has said he will do are things we have been told in the past would be done and unfortunately haven't come to pass. There's no doubt of the commitment by this government towards delivering a railway that's sustainable. And they're doing a lot of the right things. But there are concerns. And those concerns would need to be taken on board. One is the pace of development. Things happen too slowly in Nigeria. For instance, I gave you the example of concessioning of the railways. Government has been talking about doing this for over 15 years. Why are we now only getting to that point?
Better late than never, some might say.
Very true. But you would see how we have missed so many opportunities as a result of the effluxion of time. Given that it's taken 15 years to get to this point, you would also like to know that perhaps about 500 billion has gone into the railway in this intervening period, and we don't see 500 billion. We don't see those, so there's that disconnect. So in that sense, there are those concerns. The other, of course, the Minister has also touched on, which is about capacity, especially the human capacity element. It's a huge, huge concern. I think one of the tweets you read earlier talked about what happens to the existing workers. Well, if they're good, then they would work in the private sector.
All right, I have to pause it here because we're running out of time. We have a second topic. But let me again come back to the Honorable Minister. The maritime sector is one area where, of course, Nigeria could make a lot of money. But we understand that's one area also that is dominated by foreigners. And there have been, calls for, us to have a national carrier. What has been done to revitalize Nigerians in this area?
Let me start from where he started before I go to maritime. First is that I hope that Nigerians will acknowledge that we are not doing the line he just said now. When he said it's been slow in Nigeria, we've not been slow. Since the government came to power, we've not been slow. We may not be talking much in terms of what we're doing, but we've not been slow. We made a concession. We met a concessionaire who said, I have been approaching this government in the past 8 years, and nothing has happened. I said, why? He said, he doesn't know. I said, bring your documents. And today, we are at the verge of concluding concession agreement before the end of March. We are at the verge, I'm not sure, because, like I said, now they are at the point of negotiation. They're not talking to themselves. So we don't know what will be the differences. The differences include what happens to those workers. And those workers will not just be laid off because they are Nigerians. The president will not accept that the workers be laid off. So the workers will be retained. But like you said, capacity is essential. So
I'll have less than 5 minutes to
I know that. So the capacity is essential. Now, jumping from that to maritime, I'm a bit frustrated in the maritime sector. Why am I a bit frustrated? I came with all the enthusiasm, ready to do the national carrier. The law says you must have a foreign investor who will take 40% equity. I got a foreign investor. Where are the Nigerian investors? They were not there. We don't have a Nigerian flagship. So now the idea was, because the law says any Nigerian flagship will be the first vessel we'll approach to carry the national cargo. So you have business already for you. And I promised Nigerian investors that I will make that case before the Federal Executive Council that all MDAs, in fact, that law includes states and local governments. But I just said I will limit it to MDAs first. But can we come together, partner with this foreign investor? And up to now, believe me, I don't think we're making progress, because there are no Nigerians who have that kind of money to put into that investment. If they are, they should come forward.
All right. Well, let's get the views of Otumba Kunle Falare on this. Where are the potential investors in the new national shipping line?
Well, let me say very quickly here that it's a very good idea that you have a national fleet. It's a very good idea you involve Nigerians in investing in this project. But then you have to go back and say, what's the capacity? What is the ability of these Nigerians? And also, what are the issues to put before them? Don't forget that when you talk of investment, you are not limiting it to only those who are practitioners in the maritime sector. You can be an investor in finance. You can be an investor in industry. You might have the available resources to invest in the national fleet. So it is an issue which has to be widened, because I have not seen a publicity that actually outline the basic elements in this national fleet investment. I know the ministry have been talking to a lot of Nigerian ship owners and entrepreneurs who would like to be invest in this particular project. But I think it should be given a wider spectrum. It should be given a wider spectrum to let other Nigerians know that they can invest without being in the sector. If you go to the stock exchange, you are investing in many of the stocks available. You don't have to be in the industry. You don't have to be in the services, but you can still invest. That's one part. The second basic fact is that over time, government has been seen as the only corridor for financing indigenous shipping through the through the Nigerian Maritime Administration, Safety and Administration Agency. But that has not to be. Financing the national fleet or any other mode or in any other way, every other options has to be an arrangement between the entrepreneur and his bankers. They have to look for finance beyond the national maritime, the NIMASA. That's one part. I believe very strongly that the potential in this sector, particularly in the fact that you can guarantee this cargo, as the minister have said, you can guarantee the cargo, definitely the traffic will flow. I think more has to be done by explaining to the public the opportunity in this sector.
Otumba Falare, would like to thank you for being with us. You've joined us from our Lagos Network Center, and of course you are chair of the Nigerian Ports Consultative Council. Thank you very much for your insights.
It's my pleasure to be here.
And also, just before we express our thanks to Jibril Ibrahim, let's also get your thoughts very briefly, because we are pressed for time now. How do we get local investors to get interested in the opportunities that are inherent in the maritime subsector, rather than having complaints about foreigners dominating the area?
Certainly, we need to come up with measures in order to ensure financing for ship acquisition and shipbuilding. But in this regard of national carrier, we can go into an arrangement whereby financial muscles are brought into the arrangement in order to provide financing for the acquisition of ships. Also, ship builders can come into the arrangement, and they will put part of their equity into the arrangement in such a way that the ships that they produce are part of the equity, and it will be easy to acquire these vessels. But by and large, cargo, the availability of cargo is the bottom line, and that is what is going to guarantee that this project is going to succeed or not. Happily, the minister is in a position to influence that the cargo is there for the ship owners, eventually local ship owners, when this arrangement is in place. I think government need to do more publicity in this area in order to bring more people on board so as to have a success of it. But having said that, I want to go back to the issue of national transport policy. We must make it public. We must make it in such a way that everybody will bring his hand on board, not only talking about the issue of the National Council on Transportation, just to ensure that everybody is carried along and people key into it in such a way that all our transport systems have the basic requirements of the policy of interconnectivity, intermodalism, in such a way that the interfaces, you can see what is happening in the port, particularly in Lagos. The interface between the ports and the road, the hinterland, is a disgrace. We cannot be having so much problem with access to our ports in Lagos. We must designate some areas as port areas so that to put sanity in those areas. Thank you very much.
All right, Jibril Ibrahim, National President of Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, joining us from our Lagos studio. We'd like to appreciate you for joining in the conversation.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Back here in Abuja, Honorable Minister, just a final word from you. Would like you to quickly just make a short prediction. How soon are we likely to exceed the 4% contribution to the GDP?
What's the basis for measurement? You should take a second measurement now, because there's an improvement in the transportation sector. It's until you take that second measurement, you know whether there's a growth or there's a decline. And let me respond to what the last speaker said about about the NPA, the gridlock. There's an improvement. And apart from that, we are talking, again, we're involved in the concession arrangement where MPA and the foreign company is talking to decide how to go about it. And in that, we should be able to have a meeting tomorrow also in my office to see whether that can be concluded. When that happens, then the issue of gridlock around that will no longer be an issue for importers or exporters. I think that there'll be huge improvement. But once more, let me thank you and thank Nigerians for this opportunity to be here and to be the Minister for Transportation. One assurance I give to Nigerians is that we will leave the Minister of Transportation better than we met it.
All right, Right Honourable Rotimi Amechi, that's Honourable Minister of Transportation. We'd like to thank you for being part of our discussion this morning.
Thank you very much.
And then we also would like to thank a railway expert, an expert on rail transportation, Mr. Roland Ataguba. Mr. Ataguba, a pleasure having you join us in the conversation this morning.
Thank you very much.
All right, it's still Good Morning Nigeria. We are reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, of course, we'll be dealing with the ongoing developments in the Gambia. How do you get Yahya Jammeh to step down on Wednesday, the 19th of January?
I banned my wife not to give me fast food. Now she has turned to Mama Put.
Hey!
My own is even better. My children are like one. Tea and bread in the morning. Tea and bread in the afternoon. Under hot sun. Tea and bread when they want to go to bed.
I told Shirley, can she cook? She said yes, she can cook. Good and fine. I bet her. She gave me the cost. I gave her 2,000 naira. After several hours, she gave her. She cooked palm wine for me to eat. So I never know.
This week on your award-winning comedy series, Professor John Bull, starring Kanayo Okanayo, Mercy Johnson, Queen Wokoye, Funky Malam, Ime Bishop.
Go to Mama Put and buy food for him. Put it in the freezer. Automatically it becomes homemade food.
Caroline.
Professor John Bull, this Tuesday and Friday, 8:30 to 9 p.m. on NTA Network, International, and Star Times.
Over and out.
Welcome to the new speed of life.
NTA Properties Investment Company Limited, a subsidiary of the Nigerian Television Authority, specializes in creating comfort in all areas of life, such as real estate investments, that is, land, houses, and office spaces, mass leasing, savings and loan scheme, household items and car loans, and so much more. Other information and entertainment services include Property in Style, a TV program that airs on the network service of the NTA, and also Property Connect, a nationwide magazine. Our priority is to bridge poverty gaps and sustain quality welfare of our clients. Partner with us and watch us help you grow. Pay us a visit today at the NTA headquarters permanent site, Area 11 Gariki, Abuja, or our Lagos office at number 15 Awolowo Road, Ikoyi, Lagos. For more information, visit our website on www.ntaproperties.com.ng, or you can email us on ntapic2000@yahoo.com. Call us on 080-2316-3474 or 080-6939-5185 or 070-3189-0555. NTA Properties Investment Company Limited, the much needed help at your doorstep.
Okay, sir. You may now go in for your interview.
Thank you. Ah, my shoe. And to think I just bought this very expensive foreign shoe 2 months ago.
So sorry about your shoes. This is why I advise my friends to always patronize made in Nigeria products. See this shoe? It's made in Nigeria and I've had it for 2 years and it's still as good as the day I bought it.
Made in Nigeria products are good quality, and stringent government regulations and certification now mean the goods made in Nigeria meet international standards. Make the patriotic choice today. Buy right. Buy Made in Nigeria. This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Right, thank you for joining us once again. If you've just tuned in, you're right on time for our second part of our conversation. And that's on ECOWAS leaders who are mediating on the political impasse in the Gambia. And they have resolved to keep hope alive and continue pursuing efforts at ensuring smooth transfer of power through diplomacy. Of course, that's before the tenure of President Yahya Jammeh elapses. This issue was taken in Bamako, Mali, when the leaders met on the situation in the Gambia on the sidelines of the Africa-France Summit. Here is State House correspondent Adamo Sambo, who spoke with Nigeria's Foreign Affairs Minister, Geoffrey Onyama, on the outcome of the mediation efforts so far.
They have a consensus now that they're going to keep trying the diplomatic path up until the 18th of January, at which point they will take certain measures. I think that it's clear that if there isn't a judicial resolution of the matter, in other words, if the Supreme Court does not meet before then there has to be a peaceful transfer of power to the president-elect. And at that point, really, the international community will be obliged to recognize the president-elect. If he refuses to leave, then obviously the Supreme Court would not have met. Then the situation is that the president-elect will be recognized internationally as the duly elected president of the Gambia. And he will then be in a position to engage with the international community to decide the way forward.
All right, that was Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Geoffrey Onyama, there speaking to correspondent Adamo Sambo. Now, we have with us here in the studios to discuss aspects of this, the chairperson of the House of Representatives Committee on Foreign Affairs, Honorable Nena Ukeje. Honorable Ukeje, a pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
So it's a pleasure to be here.
All right. Clearly, the executive branch, has waded into the Gambian crisis. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari, of course, is leading the efforts of the Committee of West African leaders to persuade Yahya Jammeh to step down. And in the House, there's also been a motion to ensure that, listen, whatever options are there to avert conflict and crisis could be taken by way of, for instance, granting asylum to Yahya Jammeh. But beyond all of these motions and movements that we are seeing by the leaders of ECOWAS, what, in your opinion, should be the standpoint now of the House of Reps, since we have only about 48 hours or so for the tenure of Yahya Jammeh to expire, which is at midnight on Wednesday, getting to Thursday?
Well, I'd say to you that the reason behind the motion
that was brought to the floor by Honorable Sani Zoro was because Mr. President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, was leading the charge with regards to intervening and negotiating on this issue. Of course, in the thinking of Honorable Sani Zoro, he thought, and we had cause to agree with him, that it was imperative that if Mr. President was going to negotiate with President Yahya Jammeh, that he be given all the tools necessary. Now, his thinking was not premature because the House was sharply divided. There were certain people who had the opinion that President Yahya Jammeh was a dictator and therefore he should not be allowed into Nigeria. Certain other people felt that we had to continue the conversation, continue to have the conversation and seek a constitutional peaceful transfer of power to President-elect Barrow. Now, as you said, beyond the motion, what was the reason behind it? If Mr. President was going to negotiate, if he were to come back to Nigeria and the only thing that was left in the cards was granting President Yahya Jammeh asylum, of course, Nigerians, as was reflected on the floor, would be also sharply divided on the opinion as to whether or not to let him come in. Now, Mr. President was going to be armed with all the tools necessary. It was his to use or not to use, depending on what the basis for the negotiation was. Obviously, President Yahya Jammeh did not take that, but it was a good thing that Mr. President had that. But having said that, the House believes, or believed at the time, that the last option open to us should be military intervention. In my debate, in my argument, in my agreement with it, I felt that military intervention should be the absolute last option available for different reasons. It is the most expensive option. The people would be cannon fodder. The people who would normally be the victims of this are not necessarily the people who threw it up. Military interventions, of course, we go in there thinking it may be an easy walk in the park. You find that it is overstretched, and then we go from peacekeeping to peace enforcement, and we have the Nigerian armed forces. We probably will have to put boots on the ground, overstretched military already. So there were so many considerations, and so we opted for continuous negotiation, a peaceful transfer of constitutional power to President-elect Barrow. So that was the thinking behind the House of Representatives and the motion at the time. The incumbent, that said Jammeh, has warned against territorial infringement, and Nigeria is leading this mediation. With regards to keeping our diplomatic ties with the Gambia, what step do you think will be appropriate at the moment? I think that we will continue to have the conversation. I think that Nigeria will continue to speak with them. Let us also recognize that Nigeria, Mr. President, and I always refer to his inauguration speech, where he said that Nigeria will be willing to lead or function in any leadership position she finds herself. Without doubt, Nigeria is the territorial leader as well as the continental leader. And I think that Nigeria is doing exactly what Nigeria must do. She has stepped in certain situations, especially with regards to the Gambia. Nigeria has, of course, the Chief of Army Staff, the Chief Judge of the Gambia have been Nigerians. And so, I believe that whatever happens in the continent or in the sub-region would affect the rest of the sub-region. And so Nigeria and, of course, the ECOWAS and the AU are well within their rights to engage with Yahya Jammeh, because whether or not we like it, if there is a problem in the Gambia today, that problem is going to have hydra-headed, sometimes tetra-headed outcomes. For instance, there will be a refugee crisis. The Nigerian soldiers would probably have to have Nigerian boots on the ground. There's going to have to be an ECOMIG, as it is called now. ECOWAS is going to have to come up with military intervention. It's going to cost a lot of the ECOWAS countries money. It's going to cost us lives. We don't know what the toll will be. So you cannot set aside constitutional transfer. I mean, as they say, those who make peaceful change impossible. make violent change almost inevitable. And I think that, you know, you cannot subvert the will, the collective will of your people, and also dictate to the world the way in which to turn it around. Happened, but we're yet to hear even from members of the, you know, legislature in the Gambia. They appear to have kept quiet or so. Oh, well, I mean, understandably, I mean, I understand that at the time when there was the accusation, which of course the jury's out on that, by Hajia Fatu, or Miss Fatu, when she said that he would be tried and so on and so forth. Obviously, members of the parliament, of the ruling party, expressed their disdain for what they considered to be a very glib rhetoric coming out from the coalition party. So yes, they have spoken, but I also believe that the silence is, I mean, of course, it is the ruling party, and parliamentarians normally would stand by their party, and I think that that's what it is. But collectively, as a people, as a parliament, and as lovers of democracy, there is the outpouring of concern for the situation in the Gambia, and I believe that of course, the conversation is ongoing. I believe we're very optimistic that at some point in time there will be some kind of resolution. Unfortunately, if by midnight, as you say, he does not vacate, President Yahya Jammeh does not vacate, it means that there's going to be a constitutional crisis in that country. Of course, the rest of the world has said, and you heard the Honorable Minister say, that the rest of the world would recognize Adama Barrow as the president of the country. But, you know, the concern is how, you know, what happens with the military in that country, because we recognize the powers of the military as the people who sustain the democracy. And if the military is still owes its allegiance to the outgoing president, then it's going to be a bit of a concern. So I think the issues are a bit more complicated than just the recognition. I think we're going to have serious military reforms within the Gambia in such a way that a military that had been loyal to one person for 22 years suddenly finds itself at crossroads. And so there are certain issues.
Well, this is a live issue still with the House of Representatives?
Well, we have invited the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs of Nigeria to come and have a conversation with us about the way forward. Of course, it's also going to be an engagement between the House Committee on Foreign Affairs and the House Committee on Defense, because we recognize that there's also conversations about that, of course, you know, options in the event that that doesn't happen. We already have a refugee crisis with over 1,000 people, they say, fleeing Gambia and so on and so forth. So it's going to be an engagement.
All right. Honorable Nena KJ, Chairperson of the House of Reps Committee on Foreign Relations, would like to thank you for being part of our conversation this morning.
Thank you very much.
And just to also indicate to our viewers that Nigeria is certainly no stranger to granting asylum to former political leaders. We had that during the administration of General Ibrahim Babangida Siad Barre of Somalia. Just before that country collapsed into statelessness, was granted asylum, and he was living somewhere in Ikoyi around Alexander or Gerard Road.
You forgot that Charles Taylor also was given.
Well, Charles Taylor briefly before, Charles Taylor, he was on his way sneaking out when he was caught, and then of course it's somewhere.
All right, Kingsley, let's quickly join the Nigerian Meteorological Agency for the weather forecast for the rest of today.
Hello and welcome to the weather segment. Sunday was sunny and hazy over major cities across the country. Temperatures were equally not harsh. And as we move into Monday the 16th, we expect some reduction in horizontal visibility as this dust plume raised over Chad is expected to move into the northeastern part of the country, giving them moderate dust haze condition. Better visibilities over the northwest, while the central city should be sunny, hazy and dry. On the other hand, the southern half of the country is anticipated to be under partly cloudy condition throughout the forecast period. And that's where we nicely conclude the weather segment for Monday. I am Susan Opara. Stand by for the temperature details.
And that's our program, Good Morning Nigeria, for today, the first in the week. And we hope you found it quite interesting and, of course, educative. We'll always wish that you have a pleasant time with us again tomorrow. I am Claire Delapo. Afterwards, from the rest of us, have a good day.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join Claire in thanking you also for being with us today. Have a nice day as well.